Discipline yourself now, before life forces you to learn. Life does not wait for you to be ready. It applies pressure without asking whether you are prepared, rested, or willing. It does not adjust its weight to your preferences or your emotional state. When discipline is absent, life becomes the instructor, and its lessons are rarely gentle. Most people sense this truth, but avoid it. They distract themselves with noise, entertainment, and constant movement. They hope circumstances will stabilize, that anxiety will pass on its own, that clarity will arrive without effort. Yet the mind left undisciplined does not settle. It wanders, reacts, and exhausts itself. It becomes fragile in the face of uncertainty and hostile when expectations are disappointed. Stoic philosophy begins from a sober observation. Suffering is not caused primarily by events, but by the judgments we attach to them. This is not comforting at first. It removes excuses. It places responsibility where many would rather not look. But it also returns power to the individual. If your judgments can be trained, then your inner life is not at the mercy of chaos. Discipline, in the Stoic sense, is not harshness toward oneself. It is alignment with reality. It is the steady practice of governing attention, desire, and response before circumstances force that discipline upon you through loss, humiliation, or fear. The modern world encourages emotional indulgence and constant reaction. Stoicism asks for the opposite: restraint, clarity, and deliberate action, not to withdraw from life, but to meet it without distortion. This reflection is for those who feel stretched thin, reactive, or quietly overwhelmed. It is for those who sense that something essential is missing, not in the world, but in the way they meet it. Discipline can be learned now, voluntarily and rationally, or later, under pressure and pain. The difference matters. The Stoics began with a clear division that remains uncomfortable because it removes confusion and excuses at the same time. Some things are within your control. Most things are not. Nearly all inner turmoil comes from refusing to accept this division and insisting that reality should obey preference. You do not control outcomes. You do not control the behavior of others. You do not control the economy, the past, the weather, or the opinions directed at you. Yet much of modern anxiety is spent arguing with these facts internally, replaying conversations, predicting disasters, and trying to manage impressions that will never fully submit. The mind becomes tired, not because life is too demanding, but because it is being asked to do what it cannot. What remains under your control is narrower, but more powerful than most people realize. You control your judgments. You control the meaning you assign to events. You control the actions you choose in response to circumstances. You control whether you meet difficulty with resentment or composure. Discipline begins here, not in grand gestures, but in the quiet refusal to let external events dictate internal order. Anger is a useful example. People believe anger is forced upon them, triggered by others. In reality, anger arises from an internal judgment that something should not have happened. The event occurs, the mind protests, the emotion follows. The Stoic does not deny the initial impression, but questions it. Is this truly an injustice or merely an inconvenience? Is my reaction improving the situation or worsening it? This pause, brief but deliberate, is the first act of discipline. Modern life provides endless opportunities to practice this. Social media offers constant comparison and provocation. Work environments reward urgency over clarity. News cycles thrive on outrage. Without discipline, the mind becomes reactive, bouncing from stimulus to stimulus, never resting, never choosing its responses. The Stoic approach is not withdrawal, but selectivity. Attention is treated as a limited resource, not a public utility. To discipline attention is to decide what deserves mental energy and what does not. This is not avoidance. It is prioritization. The Stoics understood that the mind, like the body, becomes weakened when overindulged. Constant exposure to trivial disturbances erodes resilience. A disciplined mind learns to let minor irritations pass without comment, saving strength for what truly matters. Anxiety about the future follows the same pattern. The mind projects forward, constructing scenarios over which it has no control, then reacts emotionally to its own imagination. Stoicism does not promise certainty, it offers readiness. The disciplined person prepares for difficulty without dwelling on it. They ask what can be done now in this moment to act with reason and integrity, and then they stop. This is difficult because the modern world encourages the illusion that constant planning equals control. But planning becomes compulsive when it attempts to eliminate uncertainty rather than manage response. The Stoic prepares for adversity not by predicting every outcome, but by strengthening the mind that will meet any outcome. Discipline also applies to speech and expression. Much regret comes not from silence, but from speaking without restraint. Words spoken in anger cannot be recalled. Opinions shared impulsively shape reputations permanently. The Stoics advised restraint, not because speech is dangerous, but because careless expression reveals an undisciplined mind. To pause before speaking is to assert sovereignty over impulse. In relationships, this discipline manifests as patience and measured expectation. Others will disappoint you. They will misunderstand, neglect, and act selfishly at times. This is not a personal affront, it is human nature. Expecting perfection from others is a recipe for chronic resentment. The disciplined person sets expectations aligned with reality, not hope. They respond to others as they are, not as they wish them to be. This does not mean tolerating injustice or passivity. Stoic discipline includes action. It means acting without emotional distortion, addressing wrongs calmly, setting boundaries without hostility, leaving situations that compromise integrity without drama. The absence of emotional excess does not weaken action, it clarifies it. Work provides another proving ground. Many people tie their worth to results, promotions, recognition, and external validation. When these are delayed or denied, identity fractures. The Stoic approach is to commit fully to effort and conduct, while releasing attachment to outcomes. You control preparation, diligence, and honesty. You do not control reward. Discipline is choosing to value the former regardless of the latter. This orientation protects against both arrogance and despair. Success does not inflate the ego because it was never the source of worth. Failure does not destroy confidence because effort was maintained. In a world obsessed with performance metrics, this inner independence is rare and stabilizing. Discipline also requires the regulation of desire. Modern culture encourages constant wanting, presenting desire as harmless or even virtuous. Yet unchecked desire destabilizes judgment. When desire dictates action, reason becomes secondary. The Stoics warned that wanting what is not necessary creates dependence, and dependence creates vulnerability. To discipline desire is not to suppress enjoyment, but to remove urgency. It is the difference between preference and need. You may enjoy comfort, success, and admiration, but you do not require them to remain composed. This distinction is subtle but powerful. When comfort becomes a requirement, discomfort becomes a threat. When approval becomes necessary, criticism becomes unbearable. A disciplined person enjoys what is present without clinging to it. They accept loss without collapse. They understand that attachment amplifies pain beyond the event itself. Loss is inevitable. Suffering is optional, to the extent that judgment adds resistance. The Stoics practiced this awareness daily. They reflected on impermanence, not to darken the mood, but to clarify priorities. If everything can be taken, then character is the only reliable possession. Discipline protects character by preventing impulse from overruling principle. This is not a philosophy of withdrawal or indifference. It is a philosophy of readiness. The disciplined mind does not panic when plans fail. It adjusts. It does not indulge outrage when offended. It responds proportionally. It does not chase every desire or flee every discomfort. It remains steady. Life will test you regardless. It will apply pressure through deadlines, losses, conflict, illness, and uncertainty. Without discipline, these forces shape you harshly and unpredictably. With discipline, they become manageable, even instructive. The difference is not circumstance, but preparation. Desire, left unexamined, does not simply want. It commands. It commands. It reshapes priorities quietly, and then insists on urgency. Most people do not notice this shift until they feel restless, dissatisfied, or dependent on conditions they cannot secure. Stoicism treats desire not as an enemy, but as a force that must be governed if the mind is to remain free. Modern life intensifies desire deliberately. Advertising, social platforms, and constant comparison train the mind to believe that contentment is always one acquisition, one achievement, or one recognition away. The result is a low-grade agitation that never resolves. When the desired object arrives, satisfaction is brief. The mind quickly moves on. This cycle weakens judgment and erodes gratitude. The Stoics recognized this pattern long before modern technology. They observed that desire aimed at externals creates instability because externals are unreliable. When happiness depends on what can be removed, happiness itself becomes fragile. Discipline, in this context, is the practice of limiting desire to what depends on your own character and conduct. This does not mean rejecting ambition or withdrawing from life. It means redefining success internally. You may pursue improvement, skill, and responsibility, but without tying your worth to outcomes beyond your control. When effort is valued more than result, disappointment loses its power to humiliate. When integrity is valued more than praise, criticism loses its power to wound. Attachment follows a similar pattern. People attach not only to possessions and status, but to narratives about how life should unfold. When reality diverges from these narratives, suffering begins. The Stoic response is not resignation, but flexibility. Plans are held firmly enough to guide action, but lightly enough to be revised without bitterness. This flexibility is tested most clearly through loss. Loss of position, health, relationships, or certainty. The Stoics did not deny the pain of loss. They denied the added suffering that comes from refusal. When something that was never guaranteed is taken, outrage is misplaced. Grief may be natural. Collapse is not. This is why Stoic training includes deliberate reflection on impermanence, not obsessively and not with despair, but regularly and calmly. Everything that comes to you is on loan. This includes people, roles, and opportunities. Remembering this does not reduce appreciation. It deepens. What is known to be temporary is valued more precisely. Ego complicates this further. Ego insists on special treatment, on exemption from difficulty, on recognition without delay. It interprets inconvenience as insult and correction as attack. The Stoics viewed ego as a major obstacle to tranquility because it demands control where none exists. Discipline weakens ego by placing the individual within a larger order. You are not the center of events. You are a participant. This perspective reduces personal offense and increases resilience. When criticism arrives, the disciplined mind evaluates it without panic. Is there truth here? If so, it is useful. If not, it is irrelevant. Emotional mastery does not mean emotional absence. Stoicism does not aim to produce numbness. It aims to prevent emotion from overruling reason. Fear, anger, and sadness arise naturally. The disciplined mind acknowledges them without surrendering to them. It asks whether these emotions are justified, proportionate, and helpful. Fear of the future is especially corrosive. It disguises itself as responsibility, but often functions as avoidance. The mind rehearses negative scenarios endlessly, mistaking rumination for preparation. Stoicism replaces this habit with a simpler question: what is required of me now? Not tomorrow, not in every possible outcome. Now, this focus anchors the mind in action rather than speculation. It reduces anxiety by narrowing attention to the present responsibility. When the future arrives, it will arrive as the present and can be met then with the same discipline. Social pressure also tests emotional discipline. Approval is offered conditionally and withdrawn easily. The desire to belong can override judgment if left unchecked. The Stoic does not reject community, but refuses to surrender principles for acceptance. Discipline here means tolerating disapproval without resentment and solitude without self-pity. Injustice presents a deeper challenge. Not all suffering is deserved. Not all outcomes are fair. Stoicism does not deny this. It denies that injustice justifies corruption of character. You may be wronged without becoming unjust yourself. You may be obstructed without becoming bitter. This restraint preserves dignity when circumstances cannot be corrected. Discipline, then, is not about control over life. It is about control over response. It is about shaping the inner posture with which events are met. Without this discipline, desire pulls the mind outward endlessly. Attachment makes loss catastrophic. Ego inflames every slight, and fear dominates judgment. With discipline, the same world is encountered differently. Desire becomes preference rather than need. Attachment becomes appreciation rather than dependence. Ego becomes proportionate. Fear becomes information rather than command. This is not achieved through a single insight or moment of resolve. It is cultivated daily, through small acts of restraint, honest self-examination, and repeated correction. The Stoics compared this work to training the body. Progress is gradual. Neglect shows quickly. Life does not pause while this training occurs. Challenges continue, but the trained mind meets them without surprise. It has already rehearsed difficulty internally. It has already accepted impermanence intellectually. It has already chosen discipline over indulgence. This preparation changes the quality of experience. Even when outcomes disappoint, composure remains. Even when circumstances tighten, inner space exists. This is not invulnerability, it is steadiness. And steadiness is rare. There comes a point when discipline is no longer theoretical. Life applies pressure that cannot be avoided or postponed. Illness interrupts plans. Effort goes unrewarded. People act unjustly and never apologize. Circumstances narrow. When this happens, philosophy either holds or collapses. Stoicism was forged for this moment. The Stoics spoke often of fate not as mysticism, but as realism. Some events are fixed by causes beyond individual influence. Resisting this reality does not produce freedom, it produces friction. Discipline, in this sense, is cooperation with what cannot be changed and firmness in what can. This distinction preserves energy and clarity under strain. Adversity reveals character more reliably than comfort. Comfort allows habits to go untested. Adversity strips away illusion when pressure rises. Impulse seeks escape. Discipline holds position. This does not mean passive endurance. It means refusing to abandon principle for relief. Voluntary hardship was recommended by the Stoics, not as self-punishment, but as inoculation. By choosing discomfort in controlled ways, the mind learns that discomfort is survivable. This reduces fear. A person who knows they can endure less sleep, less comfort, or less recognition is harder to threaten. Modern life rarely encourages this strength. Convenience is treated as entitlement. The result is fragility. Injustice presents a more difficult test. When wronged, the instinct is retaliation or withdrawal. Stoicism offers a third option, measured action without hatred. Anger feels powerful, but it clouds judgment. The disciplined person acts to correct injustice where possible, but does not allow resentment to become identity. This preserves inner order even when outer order fails. Fate does not excuse inaction. It clarifies responsibility. You are responsible for your choices, not for the universe aligning with them. When effort fails, the Stoic does not conclude that effort was wasted. Effort itself was the exercise of virtue. Results are incidental. This perspective is stabilizing in a culture obsessed with outcomes. It allows persistence without obsession and acceptance without defeat. You continue because it is right to continue, not because success is guaranteed. Mortality sharpens this understanding. The Stoics did not treat death as morbid fixation, but as a boundary that clarifies value. Time is limited. Attention should not be squandered on trivial conflict, performative outrage, or endless grievance. Discipline directs energy toward what matters while time remains. The awareness of mortality also reduces fear of loss. If everything ends, then clinging is irrational. Appreciation replaces possession. Gratitude replaces entitlement. Each day is treated as sufficient in itself. This outlook does not remove sadness or grief. It prevents despair. It allows emotion without collapse. When discipline is present, even loss does not destroy coherence. The individual remains whole. The modern world is chaotic, not only because events are unstable, but because inner discipline is rare. Reaction is encouraged. Restraint is misunderstood as weakness. Yet the calm person in crisis holds more influence than the loud one. The disciplined mind becomes a stabilizing force, not through dominance, but through reliability. This reliability extends to others. When people know you are not easily shaken, trust grows. When they know you will act without excess, respect follows. This is not manipulation. It is the natural consequence of consistency. Life will continue to apply pressure. It will demand decisions under uncertainty. It will remove comforts without warning. Those who have delayed discipline will be shaped by these forces harshly. Those who have practiced will. Discipline does not eliminate suffering. It prevents suffering from multiplying. It ensures that pain does not become bitterness, that difficulty does not become identity, and that adversity does not corrupt character. This is the quiet power of Stoicism. It does not promise control over events. It offers control over oneself. And this control, once established, cannot be taken by circumstance. Life teaches, regardless of consent. It instructs through pressure, loss, disappointment, and change. When discipline is absent, these lessons arrive abruptly and leave damage behind. When discipline is present, the same lessons are absorbed with less resistance and less cost. The difference is not in the events themselves, but in the state of the one who meets them. Stoicism does not offer escape from difficulty. It offers preparation. It asks for daily attention to judgment, desire, and response, not because life will become easier, but because clarity makes difficulty manageable. A disciplined mind does not need constant reassurance. It does not require ideal conditions to remain steady. It meets reality as it. The modern world rewards speed, noise, and reaction. Stoicism rewards restraint, patience, and consistency. This path is quieter and often unnoticed, but its results endure. Over time, discipline reshapes identity. You become someone who is not easily provoked, not easily discouraged, and not easily lost when circumstances shift. This is not perfection. There will be lapses, moments of reaction, days of fatigue. Discipline includes returning to principle without self-punishment. Correction, not condemnation, sustains progress. If this way of thinking resonates, it is because you recognize the cost of living. Without inner order, you have seen how quickly life can overwhelm an undisciplined mind. You have also sensed that another way is possible, one grounded in reason rather than impulse. This channel exists to support that practice, not through slogans or promises, but through steady reflection rooted in Stoic thought and applied to modern life. If you choose to continue, do so with patience. Discipline grows through repetition, not intensity. Follow the channel if this approach serves you. Return when you need clarity. Apply what is useful, leave what is not. The work remains yours.